All right, now let's break this down real quick. That's again. Hey, Cindy, I didn't see you come in. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Good. Why is it important for a king to be fair? Fair, sorry. I get dramatic in my voice. Right. Why is it important for a king to be fair?
Because he doles out the justice.
I'm sorry?
He doles out the justice.
Okay, so why is it important for him to be fair? Can't justice just be when he decides it to be?
It'd be nice if it's fair. Depending on who decides.
Why?
You don't like someone corrupt.
See, you've been hanging around me too long. You're answering questions with questions.
Hard time.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you. Go ahead.
You don't have some stability in what you know you can do and not do, then it's going to be turmoil in the country.
Okay.
Because they're afraid, well, he gave this guy this punishment, and he didn't give this guy a punishment for the same thing. So, there's just too much
Cause for
uneasiness.
Inconsistency.
Well, let's consider some examples from biblical history. You don't have to flip there, but we know the story. In Matthew 2, verse 16, then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious. Then he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained for the wise men. Now, we know that's part of the story of the birth of Jesus, but do we actually sit back and consider what's that is actually talking about? A guy who was on the throne, who was in charge of Israel, was able to make a decree. A decree that he was able to make, and nobody said, no, you can't do that, was to be able to go around the region of Bethlehem and strike down every male child that was 2 years old or younger. And nobody could stop him.
No one would stop.
No one would, it's easy for us to say no one would, because in our country we threw off the leadership of it. But again, we weren't raised in a royal society. So many times you get someone on power and they'll make a decree. History's filled with this stuff. Someone in power will make a decree, and the decree is evil, and the rest of the people will just sit back and say, well, what could we have done? Israelites in Egypt. Pharaoh makes a decree. Israelites are becoming too numerous for us. I know, we'll take all the Israelite babies and throw them into the Nile. No one stopped. It happened. How important is for the person to be in charge to be fair?
Well, you don't want someone making judgments that would the crime doesn't fit punishment.
Right.
Jim didn't find fair. That was throwing those babies in the river was fair labor.
It's fair. Yeah, it's like that old saying, what is chaos to the fly is normal to the spider.
But in the annals of history, there have been incredibly few rulers that have been fair or just.
Why? You're right. Why?
Didn't have God.
Because
That's one, but why?
in their minds, their ego took over.
Yeah.
Absolute power corrupted and absolute.
Yes, sir. I don't know your name, but yes.
Get the same one you did, Jeff.
Oh, okay. That works.
Yes.
So he's going to say something intelligent now. You want
To have a king that's absolutely fair is so difficult because we have so many failings, and it's so easy for us to justify the actions that we do because of the way we see things.
Yes.
So true fairness can only come with somebody that is able to see things from multifaceted
Right.
ways, and that's hard to do.
Yes, it is. Consider Hollywood. I know a lot of us don't want it. But consider why is it that so many young, inspiring people want to go to Hollywood, fulfill their dreams, and then they go out to Hollywood and then they fall off their nut? We get a little screw loose up there. Why? Why does this happen? Why does this happen with the celebrity class? That they go out there and they try to say any crazy thing that comes to their head, and they think that everybody's going to embrace it, and it's like you're losing it. You know, you need to watch it. You know, I mean, why does this happen?
Well, because number one, the younger generation that's doing that is not, most of them don't have the capability to fend for themselves. And they get out there and they find out that it's not all glamour and bliss. And the other part of it is that when they do have a little bit of fame and they start gaining a little wealth, they don't know what to do with it.
When put yourself, you know, you gotta feel sorry for these people. You put yourself in an environment where everybody wants to be around you, and they're willing to say and do anything to stay into your good graces. And so the only thing they're going to tell you is that you're awesome and everything you do is great, and that's all you hear. People, if you're famous and people who are around you, they want to be part of your inner circle. They will bow down and kiss your feet to stay there, and so they're gonna boost you up, and they're not gonna say, "Man, that's a stupid idea." They're like, "No, it's great. You want to wear a dress to the Oscars that's entirely made out of meat? Go ahead. That's a fabulous idea." You know, and whatever the case may be, you know, but they'll say it. Nero, Caesar of Rome, burned down half the city because he thought it was going to be a great idea. Let that sink in. He wanted to do some urban renewal. He didn't tell anybody beforehand. And so he goes out and, well, not him, but he sends people to go out and set fires in Rome. And he thought that everybody was going to rejoice at this, like it was going to be some great idea. Lo and behold, after it's done and the fire gets put out, he gets the shocking news that not everybody liked that idea. So he needs a scapegoat. The Christians. And then he starts unleashing the great Christian persecution that went from 67 to 70 AD or somewhere about there. When people get power, when people get authority, it doesn't even have to be a lot. Someone once said, I forget who it was, but someone once said, it might have been Lincoln, actually, Abraham Lincoln. You want to see what kind of person someone is, give them some power. Because it's when we get some power that those temptations come. Absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Again, don't listen to me. Just pick up a history book, and you don't have to go far. Just look at situations where people were able to amass power. And Peggy, you're looking very intelligent. What do you got for me?
She's very smart. They were lacking wisdom. They were not wise. They got power, but no wisdom.
Yep.
And so they didn't, there's nothing wrong with power as long as it's balanced with wisdom.
Yep.
Then fairness comes in.
Yep. Yes. Now, compare that with a famous episode from Solomon's life. This is 1 Kings 3. 1 Kings 3 and verse 16. Then two prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. The one woman said, now just stop right there. Think about some of the jerk rulers we've had in history. From any nation. First of all, how many of them do you think would want to hear the complaint of a couple of prostitutes?
They would pay them off.
Do what?
They would pay them off. Get them out of the-
No, I mean this is part of the whole fairness thing. Who deserves the fairness? If we want a king to be fair, then who gets the fairness? What? Everyone. What about the wealthy people whom is going to help me stay in power?
You know,
maybe everyone is not exactly right, but everyone that deserves to be right, or everyone deserves if they try to do right.
Right.
Because we got people that don't do things right. How much do they deserve, that they deserve to be heard according to the way we run our government? Because you're innocent until proven guilty. So, but still, there's got to be a class somewhere.
Yeah. But even if someone is of a lower class, does that mean they don't get fairness? That's not the way it's supposed to be. And again, that's one of those things when we're talking about power, we're talking about authority, when we're talking about the power and authority of God, this is why it's so important. Who did God offer salvation to? What? I mean, not just the upper crust folk? I mean, not just people who live in America? America. You know, apostrophe M-E-R-I-C.
Yeah.
Actually, I misspelled that. It's apostrophe M-U-R-I-C. But I mean, it's not just people who live in the Bible Belt. Oh, I'm meddling now. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing is, it's when we're talking about the power, the majesty, the fairness, the righteousness of God, it's something that He wanted all people to have, not just the people who look and think like us. You know, if you've been coming to the parable class, this has been some of the points of the parable of the Good Samaritan, the parable of the tax collector and the Pharisee, the parable of the persistent widow. You know, all these things where Jesus would put in class and talk about class and how the Jewish society of the day, it was like, no, you have to be a certain specific person in order to be heard. You have to be a certain specific person in order to get justice and fairness, in order to be able to be worth anything in that society. And God says no. And Solomon, who was blessed with wisdom from God, he's willing to hear the complaint of two widows. I mean, honestly, do we think he might not have had anything else to do? He took the time to do it. Don't let these small details get past you when you do your Bible reading.
Weren't prostitutes just kind of a norm? It wasn't like, I was surprised when prostitutes went to court.
But you're going to come into court before the king?
I don't know.
See, I mean, that's...
I mean, I don't know what's going on with the climate.
The king of Israel is different from every other king. That's part of the point. Israel is supposed to be a different type of kingdom. Remember, God didn't want them to have a kingdom. And then God tells them, okay, fine, you're going to do this stupid thing and get a king? Make sure, think about this in comparison to other kings that you've heard of in history. Make sure he doesn't have tons of money. Make sure he doesn't have a stable full of chariot horses and war horses and lovely horses. Don't even have a merry-go-round. Make sure he doesn't have a chariot corps. In other words, make sure your military don't have military vehicles. What's this? Make sure the king takes the scrolls of the law and copies himself down a copy for himself to keep on him at all times. This is how Israel was supposed to run. You're going to have authority, fine, but make sure it's a humble sort of authority, humble to the ways of God. And when does Israel go off the tracks? When they ignore this stuff. So here's two prostitutes coming. In verse 17 it says, the one woman said, "Oh my Lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth to a child while she was in the house. Then on the third day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth, and we were alone. There was no one else with us in the house, only we two were in the house. And this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. And she rose at midnight and took my son from beside me while your servant slept, and laid him at her breast, and laid her dead son at my breast. When I rose in the morning to nurse my child, behold, he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning, behold, he was not the child that I had born." But the other woman said, "No, the living child is mine, and the dead child is yours." The first said, "No, the dead child is yours, and the living child is mine." Thus they spoke before the king. Now pretend you don't know how this is going to end out. Everybody knows how the story goes. I'm going to say it's atheists know how the story goes. But pretend you don't. What do? It's a big one.
I run a DNA test.
Okay, suppose if we lived back then, give it to a third party until the child gets old enough to maybe have some features that you can tell. That's a good one. That is a good one. Look at what Solomon does. Then the king said, the one says, this is my son, and that is alive, and your son is dead. And the other says, no, but your son is dead, and my son is the living one. And the king said, bring me a sword. Was about to get real. So a sword was brought before the king, and the king said, divide the living child into and give half to the one and half to the other. Wow, that escalated quickly. When the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because her heart yearned for, as you saw in the article, I'm breaking in the New Bible. Then the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because her heart yearned for her son, oh my lord, give her the living child, and by no means put him to death. But the other said, he shall be neither mine nor yours, divide him. Then the king answered and said, give the living child to the first woman, by no means put him to death. She is his mother. And all Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king, because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. The wisdom of God was in him for what? To do justice. That's the point. That was one of the points for Solomon to be able to gain justice, gain wisdom from God, to be able to give justice to the people. All the people. Now you get to the period of the minor prophets, and Israelites forgot that. Judges were being bribed. Priests weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. Prophets were on the take. You could just pay a prophet a sum of money, they'll prophesy anything you want. Oh, but it's a message from the Lord. You know, and all this jazz. I mean, justice left, corruption ruled, Israel fell. It's important. Give the king your justice, O God, and your righteousness to the royal son. When we talk about the righteousness of God, let that sink in what we're talking about here and who that righteousness was for and what that actually is. God is above corruption, as he wanted his kings to be above corruption. And those dark times in history, you know, people love to say, wow, if God was God, he wouldn't allow all these dark things to happen. Bull. God gave us free will, and when people who are in authority get power, they allow their pride and their ego to run amok, and then we get the dark times. Because they don't have righteousness, they don't have wisdom, and they don't care about justice. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor with justice. Let the mountains bear prosperity for the people and the hills in righteousness. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people, give deliverance to the children of the needy, and crush the oppressor. You look at what he's, again, the idea, justice, righteousness goes to all people. You know, defend the cause of the poor of the people. Again, this is something that isn't anything new. When the judges and the courts are on the take, it's the poor who suffer. But Solomon's screaming out to God, crying out to God, singing to God. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people. Again, these prostitutes. They're not wealthy people that we just talked about in 1 Kings 3. But they were worthy enough to stand before the king and in quest for justice. So in this psalm, we have justice. We have the idea of righteousness and how God's king should have these, but also, again, how God has these. Question or comment on that before we show up? Alrighty. It says, may they fear you while the sun endures and as long as the moon throughout all generation. May he be like rain that falls on the mown grass, like showers that water the earth. In his days may the righteous flourish, and peace abound till the moon be no more. How can fear lead to peace? How could fear lead to peace?
Because people
Like an
restrain
example
themselves.
would be when the Soviets invaded Czechoslovakia. When Czechoslovakia rose up against them. And they just invaded and killing the people that wanted democracy. They invaded and killing everybody. And they told them, you do what we tell you, or kill you. Here, permeated the country.
It might be a piece of war, or not having war, but it's not an inner peace that comes from, security or lack of fear.
Submission.
Yes,
I think fear, you're talking about respect mostly. If you can work yourself into a position where people respect you, then there's gonna be peace. There's gonna be limits, rule.
yes, Cindy.
Fear, a lot of times, whether it's fear like if you're in awe of someone or fear like you're afraid of someone, both of them serve as restraining factors. They restrain us from necessarily being impulsive or saying that we're going to do it our way. We think about it twice.
Right.
But that's not a lasting peace.
Could it be?
No.
Okay. What are some of Jesus' nicknames? Okay, Prince of Peace. Okay, good. You'd be the one I wanted right off the bat. You're so smart. I missed you. Jesus in there too, like, teach me something, punk. Yeah. Now you're worried. But again, what did we talk about wisdom was? Fear of the Lord and keep his commandments. So do you ever have a hard time making that jump between, we're supposed to fear the Lord, but yet Jesus is the Prince of Peace? Why is Jesus the Prince of Peace? Huh?
He fears the Lord.
I was about to say, I thought someone said because he is. I'll be like, oh, come on.
No.
No, because Jesus feared the Lord. We realize Jesus was the perfect human in so many ways that didn't just have to deal with his sin because he didn't have any. That's not the only thing that he was perfect in. Jesus was also perfect in submission. Oh, we don't like the S word. Submission. He was perfect in submission. He was perfect in fear of the Lord. The Garden of Gethsemane, the Garden of Gethsemane scene in the Gospels is so important. Very important. Because after that point, Jesus' mind was focused on the cross. He saw it coming, but this was the night of. Don't forget how important that scene is. When Jesus prays, prays for there to be another way, but if there's not my will, but your will be done. Jesus had fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord led to peace. How does that work? Because you would think they're two opposites. How is it that they can go in the same direction?
As if you fear the Lord, you will keep his commandments. And what are the greatest commandments? Love.
That's right. That's how it works.
Love is respect.
It's about respect. But let's be honest. Are we really going to say that we don't fear somebody who can speak creation into happen? The power of God is a scary thing. One of the prophets even said how bad it is to fall into the hands of an angry God. If we don't think about the power of God and get the hair on the back of our necks raised, then we're not thinking about the power of God enough. Realize what he can do. But the way to him brings us peace. Why? It goes back to that old saying. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And if we're able to know God, we are able to know peace. Even though we fear him with the holy, you might call it holy respect, fine. It's a holy respect. There should be some intimidation there because God is not man. God is never supposed to be man, and we can't look at God as a man and compare ourselves to him in any way, stretch of the imagination. Because of everything that he can do. But he's good. He's good. And that gives us peace. Same thing with the king of Israel. They were supposed to have, they were going to have a king. Yes, he's the king and he has the authority in the land. But the king was supposed to be different. The king was supposed to be righteous. The king was supposed to see peace and justice to all. And also the king is supposed to be good. Be able to wield his power without it going to his head. And even if the nations fear him as they should, again, a great example from the life of David, when he was having victory after victory after victory after victory, all David had to do was show up, and the opposing army quaked in fear. Fear goes along with that, but fear in God can lead to peace. And the nation and the Israelites, if they feared the authority of the king, that can also lead to peace. If the king is following the dictates of God. And also for the enemies around them, that also leads to peace. Because, again, think about the time of Solomon. They just don't want to pick that fight. They don't want to poke that bear. They just want to leave it alone for a little bit. It says, may he have dominion from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. The river's talking about the Euphrates. May desert tribes bow down before him, and his enemies lick the dust. May the kings of Tarshish and the coastlands render him tribute. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring gifts. May all the kings fall down before him. All nations serve him. May everybody bow before God, as God has allowed other kings to bow and pay tribute to the king of Israel. Again, how did Solomon get some of his wealth? Because he was able to multiply the wealth that was left to him by his father David. But it was because of these deals that he made with other kingdoms. People would come and pay homage. They would want to hear what Solomon had to say. They would want to be a part of this. They didn't want to be against Solomon. They wanted to be for him. And in king situations, this made paying tribute. So again, this is something that Solomon had experienced. But he says also, may we do that to God. May we pay tribute to God. May we honor God. May we bow down and pay homage to God. For he delivers the needy when he calls the poor, and him who has no helper. He has pity on the weak and the needy, and saves the lives of the needy from oppression and violence. He redeems their life, and precious is their blood in his sight. Again, why do that? Why should we not have a big deal paying homage to God? And again, it's that idea that God is good. Above everything else, God is good. God is all power. God is all authority. God is all justice, but God is also all righteousness and all love, all compassion, and all goodness. Long may he live. May gold of Sheba be given to him. May prayer be made for him continually, and blessings invoked for him all the day. May there be abundance of grain in the land, and on the tops of the mountains may it wake. May its fruit be like Lebanon, which was known for its cedars, and may people blossom in the cities like the grass of the field. May his name endure forever. His name continue as long as the sun. May people be blessed in him. All nations call him blessed. This shifts gears, talks about the earthly king. Long may he live. But the king is going to live long as he is united to God. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who alone does wondrous things. Not the king, not people in authority. God alone does wondrous things. Again, the early success of Solomon centered around the humility of Solomon. The success of David as king centered around the humility that David had. And recognizing even when he was king, he still needed God. Solomon goes off the rails towards the end of his life because that idea of needing God leaves him. Blessed be his glorious name forever. May the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen. Amen. So remember the power, the righteousness, the authority of God, but also the goodness. Anybody have any last questions or comments on this as we wrap up? Oh, come on, I'm not that good. I do what? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank y'all for coming.
Oh, yes, we were. I know, sorry about that. I know, if it was me, I definitely. Hey, how are you doing? Did you survive?
Survived.
How do you live?
These are my good friends. You met Jessica. This is Jessica's father.
Oh.
Welcome.
What's your name?
Yes.
Jeffrey.
He's Jim.
Oh.
Say, you made it.
I'm there.
Well, we have so many
All the
years
time
of
on
teasing
these
each other.
two.
That was perfect right there. Thank you.
Hey, how are you doing? Oh, very nice to meet you. Good to meet you.
Welcome.
This is Jeffrey, Jessica's father. Jessica Cole.
Okay.
Here with me.
Right, yes.
Jessica's father.
Okay, got you.
We became great friends when he was my nursing student, so.
We had a safe trip both ways.
Many moons ago.
Hi, Cindy.
Hopefully not that many.
Very well. Good to see you hopping around.
Keep walking for you.
I'm so excited to go back to work in another week. I've been almost 3 weeks. But I can only do 2 therapy like.
I have it. It's in there. I think it'll work.
You know, my husband's been here all
3 weeks. Together played it.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Have you met my daughter before?
Okay, it'll come up just like this. The next time you hit a button, it starts.
I think Tom said that you like
The hearing things? Well, they're like,
they just couldn't stay in there too big. Maybe Ashley can try to put them in there for you. They're bigger than mine.
Turn the sound on.
Yeah, they just sit there. They don't, I don't think they're supposed to go.
Start doing it.
Sadie, you're gonna sit with me.
We're ready. And I ended this and we'll just start it again.